Hi everyone, this is the last week of Kids Zone for the summer, so I hope you all have an amazing summer and we will see you in September. So, for today's lesson we're going to see how well you remember everything that we've been learning. So, we started in the book of Exodus. The descendants of Jacob, or Israel, were living in Egypt. God blessed them with big families. A pharaoh who didn't know about Joseph came to power, and he made the Israelites his slaves. He was worried because there were so many of them, so he commanded all the Israelite baby boys to be thrown into the Nile River. But God protected Moses as a baby. God helped Moses' parents hide him for the first 3 months of his life. Then God watched over Moses when his mother placed him in a basket and put it in the river. God led Pharaoh's daughter to Moses' basket and gave her compassion for him. She named him Moses because she drew him out of the water. She adopted Moses as her own son, and he was raised as a prince of Egypt. After 40 years in the palace, Moses wanted to see how his own people, the Israelite slaves, were doing. Moses saw an Egyptian beating a slave, so what did he do? He killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. But Pharaoh found out what happened and wanted to kill Moses, so Moses fled to Midian, where he helped the daughters of a priest, and he joined their family. God never left Moses, and he never leaves us either. God is our protector. Even during scary situations, like when Moses had to run for his life, God was still watching over him. 40 years later, God appeared to Moses in a burning bush and commanded him to remove his sandals because the ground was holy. God told Moses he knew the Israelites were suffering as slaves in Egypt, and he cared about them. What task did God tell Moses he wanted him to do? To lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Did Moses agree to go right away? No, Moses didn't think he could do what God wanted, but God told Moses his name, I Am, and gave him 3 signs to show people if they didn't believe that God had sent him. What 3 signs did God give Moses to show him? Do you remember? The staff turned into a snake, his hand covered in leprosy was then healed, and water turned into blood. Moses told God that he wasn't very good at speaking, and then asked God to send someone else. God was angry when Moses didn't obey immediately, but he said that Moses' brother Aaron would help him. Finally, Moses obeyed and returned to Egypt with his family. He and Aaron showed the signs and spoke to the Israelite leaders, who were glad that God cared for them and had sent someone to free them from slavery. This lesson was a great reminder of God's power. First, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and told him God commanded that he let the Israelites go. But Pharaoh refused. His magicians, using Satan's power, challenged God's power in a battle of serpents, and Aaron's staff turned into a snake. The magicians threw down their staffs, and theirs also became snakes. What did Aaron's serpent do to the magician's serpents? It swallowed them up. The magician's power was no match for God. Then God showed his power over the false gods that the Egyptians worshipped, using 9 miraculous plagues. God turned the water to blood, which killed the fish and made the water unfit to drink. He sent millions of frogs, gnats, and flies. Next, the Egyptians lost livestock to a terrible disease. Then they got painful boils on their bodies. After that, God sent a terrible hailstorm that killed any animals or servants who were outside. But God showed mercy by warning the Egyptians before this plague. Those who feared God brought their servants and animals inside, and they were spared. The plague of the locusts came next, destroying the food crops. And for the 9th plague, God sent the darkness that could be felt for 3 days. After these 9 plagues, did Pharaoh let his people go? No. Why not? Do you remember? He had a hard heart. He was stubborn, and he didn't believe God. What does it mean to have a hard heart? Like Pharaoh's. A hard heart is one that refuses to obey God. It is proud and stubborn. But the 10th and final plague finally caused Pharaoh to obey God. What was the final plague? The death of the firstborn. God designed a special way to protect the Israelites from this plague. What did the Israelites do to protect their homes? They sacrificed a perfect lamb and spread its blood on their doorposts. This was the first Passover. By sacrificing a perfect lamb and spreading its blood on the doorposts, the Israelites were saved from the punishment God brought on the Egyptians. At midnight, when God struck the Egyptians' firstborn, God passed over their houses and their firstborns did not die. The Passover shows us a picture of someone. Who is that? Jesus. Just like the blood of the perfect lambs protected the Israelites from death that night in Egypt, Jesus' blood saves us from eternal death. Because of Jesus, we can have life in heaven with him. This eternal life is a free gift from God to all who understand that they are sinners. Ask God to forgive them and believe and trust in Jesus for salvation. What did Pharaoh finally do after the 10th plague that caused so many to die, including his own son? He said the Israelites could finally go. After the 10th plague, the Egyptians wanted the Israelites to leave fast. What do we call it when many people are leaving at the same time? Remember, it's the name of the second book in the Bible, Exodus. The Egyptians gave the Israelites gold and silver jewelry and clothing, which they took when they left. And God was faithful to lead them through the wilderness with a pillar of cloud and fire that they could see up ahead. But what did Pharaoh do after the Israelites left Egypt? He changed his mind and chased after them. Pharaoh and his army chased after the Israelites. He wanted to capture them and bring them back to Egypt. The Israelites were trapped at the Red Sea. What miracle did God do at the Red Sea to save his people? He parted the water. God parted the water so the Israelites could cross through the sea on dry land with their animals and possessions. And then he dealt a final blow to Pharaoh and his army when they tried to follow the Israelites through the sea. God caused the parted waters to rush back into place and all the Egyptians were drowned. The Israelites were saved. They didn't need to be afraid of Pharaoh and his army anymore. Who did the Israelites praise and thank for all this? God. Even after seeing God deliver them in such a mighty way, it wasn't long before the Israelites began to question God's plan and complain to Moses about food. They wanted bread and meat like they had in Egypt. God showed his power and faithfulness to the Israelites by miraculously providing for all their needs. He gave them food, water, and protection from enemies. For the entire journey, God provided manna for all the people. Why did they call the flaky bread manna? What does that word mean? They didn't know what it was, and they asked, "What is it?" God also told them how and when to collect the manna so they would learn to trust him each day. When they followed his directions, they all had plenty and could rest on the Sabbath day. When they needed water, what did the Israelites do? Did they pray for it? No, they grumbled and complained. Instead of trusting God to provide, they blamed Moses and said he was trying to get them all killed in the wilderness. We talked about 2 times God provided water. Once, God told Moses to throw a log in the water so it turned sweet. What happened when God told Moses to strike a rock with his staff? Water gushed out of the rock. When the Amalekites attacked, we saw how God protected his people. He used Moses to give the Israelites victory in battle that day. What did Moses have to do in order for the Israelites to win? He had to keep his hands and staff raised. Aaron and Hur went to the mountaintop with Moses, and they helped him keep his hands raised. The Israelites traveled to Mount Sinai and camped there. That's where God gave the Israelites the 10 Commandments. God gave them these laws to show them how they should act toward each other. These laws were important for everyday life, but more than this, God wanted them to understand they were sinners who needed the promised Savior, Jesus. Look at the 10 Commandments. 1. Put God first. You shall have no other gods before him. 2. Worship only God. You should not make for yourself an idol or bow down to it. 3. Honor God with your words. 4. Take time for God. 5. Obey your parents. 6. Respect human life. 7. Obey God's design for marriage. 8. Respect others people's things. 9. Tell the truth. And 10. Be content with what you have. The Israelites quickly turned away from the Lord while Moses was with God on Mount Sinai. They wanted an idol to worship. They pressured Aaron to help them, and he took their gold and made a golden calf. The people gave this calf the credit for delivering them from Egypt. They broke God's commands to worship him alone and to not make an idol or bow to it. Moses came down the mountain to find the people dancing and singing and worshiping the golden calf. They were out of control, and Moses was furious. He threw down the stone tablets which had the 10 Commandments written on them, and they broke. God was ready to destroy the people, but Moses prayed and asked for mercy. God listened to Moses' prayers. Because God is just, he sent a plague to punish the people, but because of his mercy, he didn't wipe them out completely. God chose to dwell among the Israelites. He gave instructions to Moses for how to build a tabernacle. There were 6 items in the tabernacle and tent of meeting. The bronze altar, where the priests offered animal sacrifices to cover the people's sins. Next, the bronze basin was used by priests for washing. Inside the tent were 2 rooms. The holy place had the golden lampstand, the table of showbread, and the altar of incense. The most holy place, where only the high priest went once a year, contained the Ark of the Covenant. The ark had a mercy seat and 2 cherubim and was covered with gold. How did God tell Moses to make the furnishings, like the altar, table, and ark, so they were easy to carry? They had rings for poles so the Levites could lift and carry them from place to place. God thought of all the details, like how to make everything easy to pack up and carry. He even told them the colors he wanted for the tent and for the priest's clothing. The tabernacle and the priests were both set apart for God's service. Then Moses asked the people to give the things they'd need for all they were commanded to build, and the people responded generously. They brought more than enough, and all the skilled workers completed the work. Then God sent his cloud and his glory over the tabernacle to show the people he was with them. God reminded the people of their sins and the punishment of death through animal sacrifice. What did the daily animal sacrifices that the priests made on the altar point to? It pointed to the final, perfect sacrifice of Jesus. He did that so they would look ahead to when Jesus the Messiah would come. Jesus would end the animal sacrifices by his one perfect sacrifice on the cross.